Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and in this video I'm continuing with my story. I've been doing a number of these over the last few weeks, and people have been interested in the story of my life and my sort of biography, and people have been commenting that it's actually sparked memories from their lives, which has been absolutely fantastic, and I'm thrilled. So I shall continue with some more of my childhood memories, and this one this leads on from the farm. I was telling you about the farm that we used to play in at the back of my house in Horsham, and now obviously had nothing to do with me, the farm as such. It wasn't on my property or anything. It was a farm that we enjoyed playing around in the fields and in an old derelict orchard that we had, and a car dump. I think I mentioned that in the previous one. Well, in time the farm became empty, and in fact my friend Peter Richardson, who features in this video today, in this memory, reminded me that at one point the farm had a squatter. The farmer had gone and it was derelict a bit, and there was a squatter. There was somebody living in the farm. We didn't know who he was really, but at some point when we were playing we were told to stay away from the farm, but on the extremity of the series of buildings that there was a building, a barn with a room upstairs and an empty room downstairs. But it was the room upstairs that we had taken, my sister, Peter and some other friends had taken a liking to and had made our camp. And this squatter had said, you can play in there, no problem, have that as your camp, but leave the rest of the house and the barns and all that alone. And I don't suppose we really thought of him as a squatter. I'm not quite sure. Perhaps it's what we saw in retrospect, but he was quite happy if we mucked about in this barn, which we did. We also, of course, mucked about in the fields, which was fantastic. And one day, and I guess we must have been in our earlyish teens, 13, 14, something like that. One day we're in the field and we see a Ford Capri. Now, I'm pretty sure it was a Ford Capri coming down the lane, and as usual we used to duck in the crop and shout farmer, but this wasn't the farmer because there was no farmer. We saw this car coming down the lane and we watched, and as it came towards the farm buildings it suddenly screeched to a halt. Now this lane is an old unmetalled lane, a sort of bumpy path to the farm. It screeched to a halt, the doors flew open, and these two blokes leapt out, rolled onto the floor and got into a sort of kneeling position and started to point what to us looked like guns at the farm. Well, we couldn't quite believe our eyes and we watched with amazement. And then these two blokes, they got back up either side of the car where they had rolled out and got back into the car, closed the doors and reversed up the lane a bit, which was a bit strange. And then they waited, and then suddenly the car lurched forward once more, went hurtling down the lane, skidded to a stop, the doors burst open, and the same guys leapt out again, rolled over and pointed their guns whilst on their knees at the farm. And we were obviously stunned a second time, but thought that very strange. But what was more weird was they then got back into the car, reversed it back up the drive and waited, and then repeated the same thing. They must have done this 3 or 4 times. And we had by this point hidden in, because we figured, you know, men with guns, they were in jeans and I don't know, some shirts, you know, they didn't look official at all. They just looked like a couple of yobs. So we were a little bit worried. There we were in the middle of the field, right in front of the farm, and there were these two blokes with, clearly now I think we were convinced they were guns. Well, then they drove the car up to the farm and we noticed there were some other people there, and they were all crowded round this object which was on legs, and we realised it was a film camera. They were making a film. Oh, wow. Now, this was quite new to us. We'd watched the television and seen films being made and all of that sort of thing, but we'd never been close to a film unit. And we watched, and we slowly got closer. We didn't immediately go straight up to them because we didn't think that we would be allowed, but we slowly got up and started to watch them from afar. And it transpired they were making a film about a woman who'd been kidnapped, and the two blokes who'd been in the Ford Capri must have been plainclothes policemen, and a bit like The Professionals, which was on at the time, or The Sweeney. And they were chasing after whoever it was who had kidnapped this girl. Well, I say girl, woman. And they chased him through the farm, and through a series of these shots, which took a while to set up, they chased this fella onto the roof. I think there may have been two, because one was shot, fell out of the farm window and went through a covered walkway in front of the front door and fell down dead. And another one was clambering over the barns, and he was shot and rolled down. It may have been the policeman, I'm not sure which one it was. But anyway, he rolled down off this barn and fell about 12 foot to the ground. Bang. Of course, we were watching how it was all done, and they had boxes and old cardboard boxes and mattresses which they had placed down. So we saw how they did it when they were shooting blanks, obviously, and they had the camera and they would do it several times. And so this character would roll off the barn, off the roof of the barn, and onto the mattress and the boxes, and then they would clear those away and show him on the ground. Well, the piece de resistance was when the villains had gone into this barn, the barn that we thought was our camp, and they started to put this funny stuff around the windows and the door. They let off a smoke machine, lit this substance that they'd been painting round, which turns out was a sort of petroleum jelly, a bit like Vaseline. And so what it looked like was the barn was on fire. The door frames had flames pouring out of it, the windows the same, smoke was coming everywhere. And the scene that we watched them do was where this girl had been set on fire inside the lower part of the barn and suddenly ran out with flames on her back all over, pretty much engulfed in flames, and she ran past the camera and she fell onto the ground, and two hefty blokes with blankets fell on top of her and put the fire out. It was so impressive. Absolutely found it amazing to watch. It turns out they were called Action Incorporated, and they were making a stunt film which highlighted all their different services. So, you know, the sort of clambering about on buildings and shooting things and the fire stuff and all of that. And well, we were well impressed. And it's really that started to make me think about doing films or becoming a film person, a director, cameraman, even an actor. I think that really sort of made it the thing that I wanted to do, because watching them do it, you saw that it wasn't a magic process. You could see the logic. Oh, you set the camera up here, you film this, and that happens, and all of that. Anyway, they cleared off. I think they probably were only there for a few hours, because they cleared off and we watched them go, and we noticed that they had left all the cardboard boxes folded up in a garage and the mattresses. And so nobody was about. We set them all up, got onto the roof and thought, wait a minute, we could do this. And we had a little play. And so we would roll off the roof in the same way they did, fall, land on the mattresses, on the cardboard boxes, which braced our fall. And suddenly the idea is, why don't we make a film ourselves? Well, we didn't have film cameras, but my dad had an old SLR. He had a Zenith, one of these old Russian cameras, an SLR. And so went home, and I think the next day or a day after, we came back, it must have been during the summer holidays or something like that, because we came back the following day, reassembled. We'd got this vague script which we called Mini Pete's First Job, and my friend Peter was going to be this undercover policeman. And we had the story was that Ruth Jane Robinson, a name we just made up, had been kidnapped by the Black Panther and taken to this mysterious farm, and it was down to Mini Pete, who'd had a tip-off to go and rescue her. I was doing all the camera work, so I'm not actually in it, and we took slides. And we basically copied their storyline of this girl being kidnapped around the farm, but there was only one evil person, and we had him clambering around on the roof, and Mini Pete would clamber about on the roof after him. Mini Pete was shot at and he fell to the ground. Of course, we did all the setting up of the props and stuff, and then we couldn't do the fire, obviously, because we didn't have the plutonium jelly. And I think even us, even though previously I think we'd found the grenade I told you about last time and had lobbed that about, I don't think that we were prepared to set my sister on fire, although there were times when I quite willingly would have done so, but that's another story. Not now, of course, but we wouldn't have done that. That would have been too dangerous. But we did do most of the rest. Then we had the rest of the story was that he got away with the girl, Ruth Jane Robinson, that was my sister, and they got over to Chantonbury Ring, and it was there that Mini Pete managed to catch up with them and shoot the evil, which was played by a friend of mine called Julian. And they got him and he saved the day. And I think we did it in about 40 slides, 40 individual slides, which, if you think, that's sort of like storyboarding, and doing it like that teaches one, and it taught me for sure, how to tell a story in a series of stills, a bit like a comic. And so that's what it was. And from there, I was bitten by the bug, and so was Peter, and we both pretty much similar time saved up enough money to buy Super 8 cameras. I think I had a standard 8 actually, and I think, yes, that's right, I had a standard 8 camera, and Peter got a Super 8 camera. Then I upgraded to a Super 8 later on, and we started to make lots of silly little films, which I can tell you about in another video. But yes, that's the thing that in my early teens really got hold of me and said, this is what you want to do. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And of course, I've been trying to do just this all my career. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little rendition of my story. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And I will be back again on another inclement day. It's raining today, and I will continue with more of my memories. Be interested in yours if you've got any memories of interesting events that have happened to you that have influenced you when you were young, perhaps to change your career or to go into something different. I'd love to hear from you about that. Anyway, thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Bye bye for now. Bye bye.